My name is Julian Enoizi, and I'm the Chief Executive of Pool Re Insurance Company. I wanted to take a moment of your time to just tell you about the launch of our 5-year strategy document entitled Guaranteeing Great Britain, Managing Terrorism Risk and Building Resilience. The reason we've done this document at this time is because we are undergoing a 5-year review by Her Majesty's Treasury, and we therefore felt that now was a good time to launch our strategy for the future and to give a roadmap for what we perceive to be the important issues over the next 5 years. Pool Re, I think, is recognized the world over as being a world leader in its field. And I think what we want to try and do is to ensure that we remain a world leader. And so we welcome this review as an opportunity to improve the scheme and to achieve some of the strategic objectives. What will then happen is there will be a call for evidence by the government, and that will give you, our stakeholders, our friends, our competitors, pools from around the world, the opportunity to feed into that review and to give your views on how terrorism risk is managed in the United Kingdom. Hopefully, the document that you are going to receive as part of this video will allow you to read and understand Pool Re and to provide your own views in that call for evidence. For me, it's extremely important that people, whatever their views, participate in that review, because only in that way will we get a broad church of views that will allow us to continually drive improvement in how we manage terrorism risk. Essentially, the document outlines the strategy for Pool Re, and it does so really under 3 broad headings. The first heading is about repatriating risk and how you continue to drive risk back from the commercial market, essentially giving the taxpayer an exit strategy so that the government isn't on the hook for this risk ad infinitum. And the way in which we want to do that is by driving risk back into the commercial market and stimulating that market. And there are a range of initiatives that I'll talk about in a second that are designed to do that. But in many respects, that is tied up with the second leg of our strategy, which is Pool Re Solutions. Pool Re Solutions, which we launched last year, is essentially the consultancy arm of the reinsurance business. And what it really aims to do is to assess the risk, to price the risk, to manage the risk, to understand the risk, and therefore mitigate the risk so that the transfer of that risk into the reinsurance markets can be done in a way that is educated and informed, and essentially you move back to a risk reflective type of market as opposed to one which is entirely reliant on a government guarantee. The third leg of the stool is that if you can find a way for the private market to be informed about a peril which 27 years ago and even 10 years ago was very little understood anywhere in the world, then perhaps it can offer a template for how other forms of systemic uninsurable risks can be insured, at least in part, by the private market in future, and that governments can therefore feel secure in the knowledge that if they choose to intervene in a market, it isn't forever, and that the market will eventually take the risk back as they understand it. And obviously, what we've been going through with pandemic, but also other forms of systemic risk, catastrophic cyber, for example, long-term climate effects, etc., could be handled by the insurance market in collaboration with government and academia in public-private partnerships in the future. So how do we propose to do that? Well, as I said earlier, I think part of the idea is to return risk to the private market so that the taxpayer is insulated from that risk. There are a range of ways in which we can do that. Buying reinsurance, buying capital market cover are just some ways of it, but there are other ways, more innovative ways that we could do that, perhaps by looking at different ways of bifurcating the risk so that we actually look at the tail event type of risk, the CBRN, the cyber attack, in a different way to how we look at more conventional type of attacks, so that the market is more comfortable perhaps with one than the other. I think we can also look at amending the way the scheme operates. Today, it operates very much as a per risk reinsurer, whereas actually by moving to a treaty reinsurer, we may be able to reach a broader cross-section of the economy and make sure that take-up rates are increased and that moral hazard is reduced. I think we also need to look at how we close terrorism insurance gaps. And we've done that with cyber and non-damage business interruption, but there are other terrorism gaps. And there are also questions around the definition of terrorism, which is, in the 1993 Act, is already 27 years old and perhaps needs to be updated. So there are a number of things that we want to do. They're all contained in this document. And I hope that you will have an opportunity to read the document. And I hope that you will have the opportunity to respond to the call for evidence, because that will make Pool Re a stronger organization, and that will ultimately build the resilience of the United Kingdom economy. Thank you.